Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some nuclear revenge. Please check out the KCC Discord linked in the description down below. There you can talk to me and a whole bunch of KCC fans who hang out there on a regular basis. I look forward to seeing you there. Our first story today comes to us from Nuclear Wasteoid. When the gift horse bites you back. Let's jump right in. My story begins about 6 years ago. I was a frequent and dedicated customer of a locally owned smoke and vape shop in my hometown. The owner heard me say I was looking and offered me a job. It will have to be under the table, and I can't pay more than $10 an hour. I was just happy to be out of the house and seeing someone other than the kids and family. So the owner spent a day training me, gave me her cell number and door keys, then told me to call if I had any questions. That was it. No other info besides, call me if you need pricing. It was kind of a sink or swim thing. They then start another business in another state. My shop was in California, and they opened another business on the other side of the country. I went from Friday and Saturday to full time. I went 2 months without being paid because they just never came home. I finally told them, look, I'm basically running the place alone. I can do all the ordering and whatnot, send you it for approval, and then you can just stay there and pay me via Zelle. They said yes to all of it, except for the pay part. Instead, they would have their family friend, T, check the books and receipts, then check my hours, then pay me up to that date every 2 weeks. T got paid quite handsomely, but also took whatever she pleased from the shop too. I took note of everything she took, how long she was there, and sent all of it to the owner, Lisa. T did not like that because it was all taken out of her pay. So she started being busy and not showing up to pay me when she was supposed to. Instead of every 2 weeks, it was every month or every 5 to 6 weeks, and I had to text my boss to beg for an advance of pay to get gas. So from 2 days a week to 7 days a week with 10-hour days. Lisa and her hub refused to pay for expensive software, so I did all the supply list, ordering, and tax stuff on my Google Drive, and sent the info they wanted by email. Eventually, I began to get calls that I had the wrong music playing on the stereo. I played reggae and she wanted hardcore rap, that she wanted that or this customer out now, which I generally ignored because they were paying customers after all, or things like that. I began updating and improving the shop at their request, all on my own dime that they swore to reimburse, which brought in a bunch of customers and new stock. Our CBD section and customer base bloomed. Our vape section went from 2 shelves to an entire wall, and people from other cities came to our shop because I could repair almost anything that was broken. Our water tobacco pipes area became huge, with hand-blown glass pieces from famous and very well-known artists on sale. From my connections, they got them hella cheap and boosted that price 400% to sell them. Basically, I took a small town, rinky-dink vape and smoke shop and made it hugely successful, very profitable, and well-known across the state. All this time, I was told I would be getting a percentage of the profits, and that I was family. And they always treat family well, with profit sharing being done at Christmas. Christmas comes and I am told, our other biz is doing bad, can we pay you the percentage in 6 months? I agreed. More the idiot I. COVID happened, but we kept our heads above water, becoming listed as necessary business. I pointed out their business license still listed them as selling food and snacks, even though they didn't. So we stayed open. All the other shops cut their hours or closed, but we were pulling in cash like never before. Tea was still coming sporadically, and I was working my butt off, but since I loved the shop and my customers, I tolerated it. But as I was massively overworked, I eventually paid for it. I was admitted into the hospital for 2 weeks for exhaustion and a heart condition that the exhaustion made worse. The whole time I was in there, my boss kept calling and making me prove I was in the hospital. I had calls constantly from T, who filled in, and just in general, Lisa was pissy as hell I was in the hospital and not her shop. I get out and back in the shop, and she asked me to work on a huge project for her. Scan 5 years worth of register receipts, enter the daily totals for all 5 years into a spreadsheet separated by year. Cash, credit, CBD cash, CBD credit, credit report, total bank deposit, hours worked, discounts given, etc. Took me 3 weeks to do it all, saved to my Google Drive, then emailed to Lisa. Never thought about it again. Then she calls me, frantic because the accountant said it looks like we made way too much during COVID. I told Lisa that we had been the only shop open, that was the difference. She demanded I resend the spreadsheets, but only the part for that year, 2020. I do. Then, out of nowhere, she fires me, sends in T with T's daughter, my replacement, and tells me to pack up and leave. No final pay, no reimbursement for the profit sharing, nothing. I called Lisa, and she tells me something that pisses me off to this day. You're bringing in the wrong kind of people. I didn't work that hard to update and open that place for you to fill it with this and this. That is it. And that she would settle up my last pay later. She didn't. I was pissed. I left. I'm a lesbian. She knew that. When our store was at its worst during COVID, the LGBTQ community came together and supported the shop because I was there and we all helped one another. Our biggest and best paying customers were LGBTQ, so I let all of them know what was said. I also told a few well-placed people about what Lisa had said during our phone call. I also had numerous texts where she had screen capped the security feed and pointed out people to run off, who strangely had all been POC. I also told the leader of the local LGBTQ association and the Chamber of Commerce leaders what had been said and showed my proof. As they were former customers of mine, they were appalled and spread it far and wide, utterly destroying their customer base. A month after firing me, she called, apologizing for the firing and making up excuses for not paying me, then asking where I had saved that spreadsheet. I told her that it was all on my Google Drive. She said if I sent it to the accountant again, she would settle up. Just don't send her 2020, she already has that one. So, after making my life miserable for years, putting me in the hospital, and then firing me just to pay T's daughter $5 an hour more, yeah, I am taking my revenge. She gave me the number of her accountant so that I could make sure the info got to her. I called Miss Accountant and asked her, can you send me what you do have? I don't want you to have to go through duplicate documents if you don't have to. See, I knew that Lisa had been tweaking numbers and figures so that her other business, Medical MJ, could funnel through the store and be seen as legit. See, if you sell Medical MJ, you couldn't really put it into a normal bank because if the feds wanted to, they could seize it because it is still federally illegal, and banks are under federal rules. You had to prove that the money didn't come from selling Medical MJ to get it back, which could take years. There are banks that deal solely with people in the MJ business, but even the cheapest account at the cheapest institution had a $1,000 a month flat fee. This was back in 2020 though, maybe it's different now. My boss was not one to pay money like that just for a bank account, so she was laundering it through her store. Her accountant thought the numbers were suspicious, but had no proof until now. I was sent all the spreadsheets that Lisa had sent her, and wow, was she in trouble. She was claiming that our little store was making over $10,000 a day more than we really were. And it all started happening in, you guessed it, 2020. So I accidentally sent her the real spreadsheets for 2020 with all the scanned receipts and the credit report scans and the bank deposit scans. All the info needed to really blast Lisa into the stratosphere. The accountant called and asked me, are these all real? Are you sure these are the right figures? I said, yep. All she needed to do was click on the day and it hyperlinked you to all that day's info. Register receipt for the day, the square breakdown for the CBD sold that day, and the bank deposit and credit report receipts. I told her that these were the fully updated and accurate info for that year. I remember the accountant sounded stunned. She disliked my boss as much as I did for her lies, late payments, and utter contempt she treated her with. I emailed Lisa and told her all the info was sent and that I was waiting for the payment as promised. Surprise, surprise, she blocked me and no payment went through. As I was paid under the table, it was she said, she and her husband and her best friend and her new worker said, so it was the least I could do to take her and her lying butt down. I also looked up the IRS tips email and sent them copies of the real and altered files, along with a copy of their business license. They would ask me to text them copies of them and their tobacco license. And then also called code enforcement and let them know that their fire alarm system didn't work, that they had no emergency exit, and their extinguisher hasn't been serviced in 4 years. They just sent a friend to fake it. I turned them into the FDA website for selling to underage customers. The new cashier was selling to underage all the time. And then sent in an anonymous tip that they were selling carts and wax they had made at their new business on the East Coast and were selling out of the shop. The fallout was glorious. They were shut down by code enforcement and the fire department for having black mold on the walls due to leaks they refused to fix, exposed wiring, no up-to-date servicing on the fire alarm system, and the fire extinguisher was inoperable. They were shopped by the FDA and had to pay some pricey fines for 3 different underage sales and had their tobacco license pulled. Right now, the IRS is doing a complete audit of the last 10 years of the store's taxes, and they shut the store's doors for good about 2 months ago. The bad part? I never got to hear what happened to their East Coast medical MJ business. Oh well, them's the breaks, I guess. OP, if you were the one running that business completely from day one, I'm guessing you might be able to set up your own and run it very successfully. All you would need is a little startup capital. A lot of people in the comments for this one commented that OP was a bit of a doormat, and OP kind of agreed with them, but they also said that they weren't recording their income properly and that was kind of illegal too. So there was not really a way that they could report them without it coming back on themselves as well. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Golera1, Hi Poo Drifter. Let's jump right in. Many years ago, while recovering from a brutal marriage, I was a struggling single parent putting myself through grad school on a small teaching associate stipend. I was able to rent a modest apartment within walking distance of the urban campus. It was part of a series of small 100-year-old brick townhouses, which I imagine were very nice in their day. Over the years, as old buildings do, it had settled, and the doors and windows were askew enough to be drafty. In the snowy winter, we applied plenty of shrink wrap window cling. In the summer, the brick building was like an oven, with no central AC, and ventilation was necessary to stave off heat stroke. Despite the hardships, we were safe, and we were content. After a couple of years, though, this changed when a new dude moved into a nearby apartment. Because out of the scores of parking spaces behind the apartment block, he was assigned the parking space right behind mine. The guy was, apparently, an avid fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise, having made various mods to his car and a vanity plate reading Drifter. He spent all of his free time working on this stupid car. But the idiot had clearly neglected the car's actual engine and exhaust system, because in order to drive the thing, he had to warm it up for 10 to 15 minutes before driving off. Every single time. And it wasn't regular car exhaust. It was billowing and extra rich and smelled like the gasoline wasn't fully burning off. As I mentioned in the beginning, the apartment was old and drafty, so every time he decided to drive his car, sometimes several times a day, he would first let it billow clouds of noxious exhaust fumes into nearby apartments and right into my 4-year-old's bedroom. I tried everything to keep the fumes out, but to no avail. My child and I both felt ill every time. This was hurting my kid. I couldn't afford to move, and I was out of ideas. Seeing that he was outside working on his car again, but without giving too many details about myself, I approached the guy and explained that the fumes were filling my apartment and making me ill, and politely asked if he would mind warming up his car further away from the surrounding apartments. He sneered at me and said, "Well, I'm sorry, but not all of us are lucky enough to have mommy and daddy pay for their car and put them through college. I'm sorry that my car is not up to your standards, but I'm not moving it." Shocked, I walked off in a different direction than my apartment, so he wouldn't know exactly where I lived. By the time I got home, I was angry, fuming. I knew some sort of formal complaint would likely go nowhere. Besides, it would be truly stupid to be the only person to do so right before whatever I was going to do next. I took some time to monitor his comings and goings and plan some proper consequences to fix the problem myself. The goal: to end the daily poisoning of my apartment and danger to my child permanently. Budget shoestring, of course, because I didn't have mommy and daddy to pay for my revenge budget. Skill level low. The problem was the engine, and I had very little knowledge about how to quickly, quietly, and permanently disable an engine. I didn't know how to jimmy a lock or open a lock gas cap, so I wouldn't be able to get access to the engine or gas tank. And no, I was not about to Google instructions. Time available, minutes at most. The parking lot was a very busy place. Students came and went at all hours of the day and night, and sometimes just hung out there to party or set nearby dumpsters on fire. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't just douse the car in gasoline or set it on fire, because it was parked way too close to my apartment. Cosmetic damage wouldn't work. Slashing tires or breaking windows, while satisfying, could be too loud and not permanent. And then on reconnaissance day 2, I noticed it. His car was old enough to have little triangle windows for venting in the back windows, and he kept them open at night. The answer: I would fight fumes with fumes. The next day, I bought a cheap Gatorade squeeze bottle and some eggs. I made a yellow soup out of egg yolks and warm water to fill up the bottle about 2/3 full, then added some of the fresh dog poo that was always available next to the sidewalk outside. I screwed the cap onto the bottle and left it in the sun outside for several days, swirling it around from time to time. I waited for the early hours of a Tuesday morning when the parking lot was the least busy, and snuck up to the car. The triangle windows were open. I popped the cap up, aimed it into the car, and sprayed the days-old sun-baked rotten egg and dog poop soup over every available surface of the inside of his car, down the window wells, into the air conditioner vents, and soaking into crevices and upholstery. I tossed the Gatorade bottle of horror into the dumpster, went back inside, and went to sleep. The next day was a warm one. It was one of the great joys of my life to have been home that afternoon at just the right time, to be startled by a man's voice screaming, "What the F? What the F? What the F?" I ran upstairs to the window he regularly fumigated, and through the blinds watched the scene unfold. The dude had opened the driver's side door and repeatedly moved his head closer to sniff and then gag, like he refused to believe the smell was coming from his car. He opened the other door to investigate. He kept yelling, "What the F?" and then he ran off. He came back a few minutes later wearing dishwashing gloves and carrying a stucco bucket full of sudsy water, a sponge, and a scrub brush. He spent the next half hour scream growling, holding his breath, bobbing his head into the car and scrubbing, pulling his head out to gag and scream, "What the F?" and taking deep breaths to go back in. The scrubbing and retching and screaming were increasingly interspersed with pounding on the dashboard and the roof, kicking his rims, and loudly vowing revenge at the sky. Within about 30 minutes, he was surrounded by about 10 other dudes standing in a wide half circle around the car, some drinking beers, watching the show, laughing, and offering pointers, like King of the Hill come to life. It took him roughly an hour to realize that the battle had been lost. The dude's yelling became hoarse and whimpery. He retrieved his toolbox, removed a wrench, and started doing something new to the interior. He suddenly pulled out the entire driver's seat, walked away with it, and angrily heaved it into the dumpster. He did the same with the passenger seat. Then he took the bucket over and dumped the soapy poo soup water next to the dumpster, brought the bucket back to the car, turned it upside down, placed it where the driver's seat used to be, sat on it, and, I crap you not, drove off that way. I never saw the car again. He never drove it back. That and his pride must have been a total loss. My greatest regret is that because smartphones didn't exist, I have no recording of that glorious day. Now, we normally read the full story here, and I usually skip over the little TLDR section at the bottom where they summarize their story in one short paragraph. But in this one, it's too good to pass up. It says, TLDR, arrogant dude bro poisons a struggling single parent and child with his hoopty and refuses to stop. So parent totals the car using $5 in supplies and dog poo. Parent waits until the statute of limitations has long passed, then brags about it on the internet. Okay, this one hurt a little bit. OP obviously didn't know very much about cars, they stated that themselves. But in this case, this could have been a typical modified turbo rotary or something like that probably cost a lot of money. Fumey, loud engine, needs a long warm-up time every time it's driven. Yeah, that sounds just about right. OP could have had a hand in destroying a very expensive car that person put a lot of time into. But this is NuclearRevenge, so these things happen. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.